Okay, welcome to the channel. Thank you for stopping by. It's always a pleasure to be here, and definitely a pleasure to be with those in the studio with me. An amazing team, I cannot lie, and I'm grateful to God for them. So, there are some people in our urban environment that actually go unnoticed. They go unnoticed either because, it's like, stay in your lane, let me stay in my lane, that kind of thing. And so I always wonder why it should be like that, especially when these marginalized or vulnerable urban community groups are actually playing a vital role in our environment. And I think today of the waste pickers, the trolley boys, or as they would call them, there's a particular formalized group, they call themselves urban surfers. Those kind of recycling systems that we have in our urban environment, even though they are informal, they're extremely important. Why are they important? They're important because they take and they recycle some of these waste products that we have in the urban environment. I know when I put my bin out on a weekly basis, sometimes the bin is so full with cardboards and things that can actually be reused, or bottles, and it doesn't close. Now, when your bin doesn't close, it's actually, if you don't know now, right? It actually allows for breathing ground for flies, right? So you just seem to have a lot of flies everywhere. Please go and check your bin. Go and check that your bin is actually closed, right? So when the bin doesn't close because it's full of cardboard or it's full of materials that could actually have been recycled, like your milk containers, or bottles that you have used, empty bottles, plastic or glass bottles, that you just throw them into the dump, and you find that the bin doesn't close, right? It's full of these materials that can actually be recycled. So when I put my bin out full like that, and I go on my walk, by the time I'm coming back, maybe a waste picker has passed by, and now the bin is closing because he has taken out a lot of the recyclable materials, a lot of the card boxes that were just dumped into the bin without necessarily collapsing them and putting them nicely, And so he picks all those things out and the bin closes. So by the time the pick it up or the other waste management services come by, the bin is half emptied already, but half emptied in a way that a lot of the materials are now being taken to the dump, and recycled. They are now being recycled, and in many instances, they are the source of income for these marginalized communities in our urban environment. So they take it to the recycling plant. The waste is weighed, and then they get some money. Tomorrow morning, they start the job all over again. So what am I getting at? I think we should keep them in mind, and even when you're putting things in the bin, you can separate them. So if you have two bins, one for your dry waste, cardboards, papers, plastics, recyclable materials, bottles, put them in one plastic bag or one bin, and then your wet materials that can be actually thrown away, put in another bin. And then when you see these waste pickers, I think have them in mind also, because they are up and about making a daily living, but also more importantly impacting on our environment, our natural environment, and even our built environment. So that when it rains, these materials are not at the dump and are being sent out into the water channels, which now leads to flooding. All the plastics that may end up there leads to flooding and leads to damage to the built environment, and even sometimes loss of life. So bear them in mind, have them in mind. If there's something you have, like food that may be useful to them, or clothes or shoes, pack it up nicely and just put it in the bin, right? You'll be surprised that it would make a difference in someone else's life. And you'll be surprised also that these guys are actually family people. They have people that they are sending the money back to. I remember another case during my architectural studies. We had to go and look for the marginalized urban communities. And each group, each group had a particular community they needed to go and look for. We did a lottery and we picked whatever group you needed to go and look for in the urban areas. Mine was, at that time, I mean, I'm talking about almost 35 years back, right? Mine was urban marginal unemployment, and my group were prostitutes. Now, interestingly, I also had an imam, that's a Muslim priest or in my group. So it was myself, I was a quiet young undergraduate, and this imam, and then one other guy to go out into the urban environment and look for prostitutes, who we now called commercial sex workers, right? At that time, they were called prostitutes. And even in that way, there were many that there was a lot of derogatory terms that were used in describing these urban workers. So we had to go out into the urban environment, the CBD. I was studying at the University of Ife, Obafemi Awolowo University as it's now called. And we had to go into the CBD to find these urban marginalized workers. Interestingly, even before we went out, we had to sit and really caucus, where do we find we know they are prostitutes, or we know they are urban sex workers all over the place. At that time, it was not so formalized like you would have Adult World in Johannesburg, for instance. Then we didn't really know where to find them. And as young people, we didn't know where to find them. So one guy suggested, why don't we ask the taxi driver? So we asked the taxi driver that we're looking for prostitutes. I was like, ha, you, Imam, what are you going to look for? He's like, no, it's schoolwork, is this? Anyway, we got there, and believe it or not, right there in places in the CBD where we have passed so many times, there was just one little door, and we had to walk through that door, and voila, there they were. It was a whole courtyard. Now, remember, we're in an urban, the CBD of I would say a dense rural town. So it was right there. Every day we passed that street, but we never knew. And on opening the door, the setup was a courtyard, which is um, something that's done with the traditional Yoruba architecture, is a courtyard setting. And there were just rooms around the courtyard. So we're not like, okay, who's going to talk? Who's going to knock on the door? Who's going to do this? And we braved up and we approached one of the doors. We knocked. The lady welcomed us in. We told her what we were about, and it was like, okay, that yeah, it's a job, right? It is a job. And something we found out in that exercise was that they didn't work in their own communities. So somebody prostituting in the west of Nigeria, this was in Nigeria, studied at the Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria, used to be University of Ife. And someone prostituting in Ife would come from the north or from Kwara State or something and come and work and travel back home. So at home, she's told them she's on a business trip, right? And by the time she gets back home, she gets back with school fees, money, this, that. And it was like, no. So, that exercise for me was so mind blowing. It allowed me to see another side of the urban environment, that people do what they need to do to survive in terms of survival strategies. And thank God that now, I mean, this is so many, 3 decades ago, even more. Now it's a formalized urban employment strategy. People can go for health care. There are many NGOs that work with the urban sex workers and provide health care kind of set initiatives for them. So it has changed, right? And they do offer those kind of services. The moral side of it, I'm not going into that, but they are there. Just like the waste pickers, they do have a place to play in society. Yes, there are some that are positive, there are some that are negative. The urban waste pickers, they definitely have a positive impact on our urban environment, our environmental cleanliness, also the picking and recycling of waste materials that could be beneficial to somebody else. The fact that you don't need it, somebody else might need it. What I fear and what I've seen happening is that a lot of these materials also end up in informal settlements. And then because of poor storage strategies or poor management storage strategies, you find that they actually deteriorate the more within the informal settlement, becoming a burden rather than a blessing. So channels where there are opportunities for recycling, using recycled materials. If, for instance, you are in the process of making pots from recycled plastics or brick from recycled plastics, I think there is a lot of opportunity for collaboration between the formal industries and the recycling industry in this case. Yeah, I think that's something you can do. You can play your part by packaging your waste nicely, putting it in the bin in a way that is easy for the waste pickers to get a hold of them. Right. So like, share, and please let me have your comments if there are better ways or innovative ways you are recycling in your home. I think it's good for us to share this so that we can learn from one another and create a better environment, natural environment. Yeah. All the best. Ciao.